Have you ever done BibleProject resources? They are fantastic. When I use them, I feel like my eyes are being opened to see new things. I'm being pointed to Jesus. I'm understanding the scriptures better. I highly recommend them to you. You might already be aware of them because of their videos that are very popular, but they also do podcasts and they do classrooms, online classrooms that are free. I recently did the Ezekiel classroom and I found it really helpful, insightful. I understand the book of Ezekiel better now because of it. I'm grateful to Tim Mackie and John Collins, the rest of the BibleProject team, for the work that they're doing to point people to Jesus and to help us understand the scriptures. But towards the end of the classroom, Tim talks about this phrase, Yahweh Shammah. Most people get this wrong. It's usually translated, the Lord is there. But Tim points out that this does not really do justice to the Hebrew words, Yahweh Shammah. And Tim offers a different interpretation that I will tell you about. But I think that Tim's interpretation is also wrong. So most people are getting this wrong, including Tim, I think. So in this video, we're going to talk about Ezekiel, some of the themes in the book that are relevant for the way that Tim interprets the phrase. And then we'll talk about the grammar. That's very important in how to interpret the phrase. We'll talk about what Tim says it means. And we'll talk about why I think that's wrong. And then I will tell you what I think it means. And that's what we're going to do. So the book of Ezekiel, quick overview. It's about the exile of Israel. Israel is conquered by Babylon. Some of its leaders are taken into exile, including Ezekiel, the prophet. 5 years into his exile, he has visions from God, condemning Jerusalem for its sin. In the temple in Jerusalem, idolatry has been going on. Abominable idolatry. And there's violence in the land. So God, separating himself from sin, making a distinction between himself and his holy presence and this building in Jerusalem where terrible things are happening, and this city where his people live, where they're doing evil things and they're abandoning him. And he makes a distinction between them. He separates himself from the sinful presence. And yet at the same time, he moves towards his people in exile. Ezekiel warns about an upcoming destruction of Jerusalem. And 5 years later, it happens. The first half of the book of Ezekiel is warnings of judgment, highlighting that sin separates us from God and leads to God's judgment. The second half of Ezekiel talks about God saving his people from sin. It talks about a new heart. These are the parts that you might be aware of. A heart of stone replaced with a heart of flesh. Evil shepherds replaced by a good shepherd who is both God and also the Messiah. A river of life flowing out of the temple and turning a lifeless sea into a place teeming with life. These are the parts that you're probably aware of. But in chapters 40 to 48, apart from the river of life, you might not know those chapters very well because they're hard to read. They have a lot of things that are difficult for us to understand. A list of measurements for how big the walls should be and the buildings in the temple precinct. The 40 to 48 is a vision of a temple and a city. It's got information about how sacrifices should be conducted. And it's also got lists of the allotment of territories to Israel. Now, the list of allotment to territories to Israel is significant for the way that Tim interprets Yahweh Shammah. Instead of the ancestral allotments that you'll read about in the Torah, the 12 tribes are arranged into 12 horizontal stripes. The land that's given to them arranged in stripes, 6 in the north, in the middle, the temple, and then to the south, 6 more stripes. The city, instead of being in the same location as the temple, is off-centered towards the south. Well, this is where we get to Tim's interpretation. So Tim basically says that Yahweh is not in the city. Yahweh's in the temple. And that is what the directional hey is indicating. I'm going to read to you from Tim's teacher notes. The name of the city is not, contrary to most contemporary translations, Yahweh is there. That translation would require the Hebrew Yahweh Shammah. And that's not what the Hebrew of Ezekiel 48:35 says. There's a modifying suffix on there called a directional hey, which directs attention away from the perspective of the speaker. When the noun there is used with the directional hey, it always means over there. The point of all this is that the name of the city is Yahweh is over there, which points to the temple at the center of the land. In other words, Yahweh is not in the city, but over there in the temple. The city has become a symbolic pointer to the dwelling place of Yahweh in the temple. This is a huge departure from the David Zion traditions, where Zion is equivalent with the palace of the Davidic king and with the temple. Ezekiel's critique of the monarchy is connected to this total separation of the temple from the power of the monarchy. It is Yahweh's presence and authority alone that stand at the center of the land. Now, I think that Tim Mackie is right to point out this centeredness of Yahweh's temple, and the city is not centered. And also Stephen Cook as well, who Tim Mackie quotes and credits with, I think, inspiring, pointing this out to him. But I disagree with the way that the grammar is being understood here. And also I think that there are some themes in Ezekiel that have not been accounted for. I think that there is a better interpretation. Now, I'll tell you, first of all, what I disagree with about the grammar, and then I'll talk about my interpretation and the themes that I think support it. So the grammar. I don't think that, as Tim says, the directional hey directs attention away from the perspective of the speaker. I don't think that this really distinguishes the directional hey on sham from just sham itself. The word there always directs attention away from the speaker. If you say, "Where is David?" and I say there, or I say over there, or I say that way, I'm in each situation I'm directing attention away from myself. I don't need to use a directional hey to do that. I think that actually what distinguishes Shammah from sham is not directing attention away from myself, but indicating motion towards. That's how it's normally used in Hebrew. But the second, there's not so much grammar, but one reason that I disagree is if you were talking about the name of a city, are you directing attention away from yourself? Like if you imagine that you are in the city and you are saying Yahweh Shammah, you're in the city and you're saying Yahweh Sham or Yahweh Shammah. In both cases, you're directing attention away from the city if you're in the city. But if you're outside the city and you're talking about the city, if I'm in Babylon and I'm talking about a city that's called Yahweh Shammah or Yahweh Sham, in both cases, I'm directing attention towards the city. So this idea of directing attention away from myself, it only supports Tim Mackie and Stephen Cook's interpretation if you're not in the city. So sorry, if you're in the city, if the name of the city is being used in the city, then that makes sense. But if you're somewhere else in the world and you talk about the city, then why does it indicate that that God is not in that city? So I'll try and illustrate this. I grew up in a town called Wrexham, and if I went to the shops in town with my mum, then my mum would say, "Oh, get in the car, we need to go to town." She wouldn't say we need to go to Wrexham, because we know what we're talking about when we say town. When I was a little bit older and I wanted to meet my friends in a bar or something, I'd phone them up. I'd say, "Do you want to come to town tonight?" I didn't say, "Do you want to come to Wrexham?" Because if we agree to meet in town, we know which town we're going to. It's only because I don't live in Wrexham anymore. If I tell someone where I'm from, or that I went to visit my parents or something like that, then I would say Wrexham. I'd use the name of the town. I think that names of towns are most helpful when you're not in the town, when you're talking about this place in contrast to another place. So to name the city Yahweh Shammah or Yahweh Sham, you're contrasting that city from other cities. This is a city that's got some sort of association with the presence of Yahweh, in contrast to other cities that don't have that association. So I think that Tim and Stephen have not accounted for the location of the person speaking. And I think also they've not accounted for the motion towards it. It's, I think, what distinguishes the directional hey from just saying sham. I hope that makes sense. I hope I've explained that clearly, or the reason I disagree with the grammar. So I think that Shammah indicates motion toward. When we say Yahweh Shammah, and you translate it, the Lord is there. The problem with that translation is not that we're talking about the wrong location, like Tim and Stephen would say, the presence of the Lord is in the temple, not the city that's off-centered from the temple. I don't think that's the problem. I think that the problem is that we haven't captured this idea of motion towards the city. The city is associated with the presence of the Lord, but the motion towards it is what's missing. Now, this might interest you. I hope it does. I tried to find examples of Shammah in the Bible that haven't got a poetic parallelism like in Isaiah, or some sort of verb emotion that is associated with it, like people being put in a place, or people moving towards a place, or someone being buried somewhere, or something like that. And I only found one example apart from Ezekiel 48. That's in Judges 16. I think it's 27. I think it's 27 or 24. I can't remember. But Samson is in the Gazan temple. He's in a temple in Gaza. And it says that this temple was full of people, and that all the rulers of the Philistines were Shammah. They were there. Why doesn't it say sham? I wondered, did the writer of Judges make a grammatical mistake? Can you use Shammah as an equivalent to sham without any poetic parallelism? But I think what's going on is the rulers of the Philistines, earlier in the chapter, were told that they gathered in Gaza to see Samson. So when we're told that they were there, Shammah, I think that directional hey is indicating that they're there because they're visiting. That's not where they normally are. It's not where they belong. They've come from somewhere else to this place. They're currently there, but they weren't there before. They've moved in towards it. It's indicating that they have had a motion towards it. I think that this is the only parallel to Yahweh Shammah, where Shammah is being used without a poetic parallelism and without a verb of motion, that as far as I found in my survey. So I think that this helps us interpret Yahweh Shammah. I think it does indicate motion towards the city. The other thing that I want to talk about quickly is some themes in Ezekiel that support this idea of God's motion towards the city. In the beginning of Ezekiel has a vision of God where God is meeting with him in Babylon. In chapters 10 and 11, there's a vision where God leaves the temple and he goes and stands over the east gate, the direction of exile, the direction his people went, the direction Adam and Eve went when they left Eden. He stands over the gate of the temple. It's like he's gone to the edge of this symbolic Garden of Eden, and he's on the precipice of the sacred space. And then there's a pause, and there's a message from God, and then a chapter later, he moves east to the Mount of Olives, goes over the Valley of Kidron, and God is now left the sacred space and gone in the direction of the exiles. In chapter 1, he's in Babylon with them. God is moving towards people. Because of sin, we're cast out of his presence. And yet God moves towards us. The river that flows from the temple. In the classroom, one of the participants, Kerry, asks Tim a question about the direction of the river. It goes east, then it goes south. And Tim says, oh yeah, that's a great question. I've not thought about the theological significance of the question. It requires more thought. But he suggests that those are the directions you need to go to the Dead Sea from Jerusalem or the center of Israel. You go east and you go south. But I think that it's significant because it indicates God's movement towards his people. He pours out his life towards the east, the direction of exile. He's pouring himself out from the sacred space into the world. And in south, the direction of the city. The city is off-centered because of sin, because of the failure of the kings of Israel, who are repeating the failure of Adam and Eve. When the rulers of the people, the representatives of the people, fail and sin, it creates division between God and humanity. And yet God pours out his life coming towards us. The river flows south, the direction of the city. The river flows into the Dead Sea, the most lifeless place, and makes it alive. So God's presence is, in chapter 47, being poured out into the world. And that's why in chapter 48, the city, which is off-centered from the temple, where the presence of God is, can be called not Yahweh Shammah, but Yahweh Shammah, because God is moving towards his people. And this is what Jesus does. Jesus comes down from heaven. Jesus is the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, incarnate, living in the human city. He leaves the sacred space to be with the people who've been exiled from the presence of God. And he pours out his life in the crucifixion. John talks about Jesus being stabbed with a spear and water flowing out. John also has Jesus saying earlier in his gospel, whoever believes in me will not be thirsty. As the scripture says, from him flow rivers of living water. Jesus is the one who the rivers of living water flow from. He is pouring out his life and transforming dead places, transforming dead, stony hearts like yours. You could be like the Dead Sea is a picture of God transforming the world with his life. That could be you. Believe in Jesus, receive his life, and you will be transformed. That's what I think Yahweh Shammah means. Not so much the Lord's presence is centered on that city. Also, not like Tim says, the Lord's presence is centered somewhere else and you need to go there to meet him. But the Lord's presence is found there because of his motion towards us, his people. Even though we have sinned, he comes down and cleanses us. Jesus' death cleanses us from sin, and his Spirit makes us holy. And then we can ascend into his presence, following Jesus in his ascension. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. If you've watched this far, I appreciate it. You might like other videos I've done, so you should subscribe. Why not? Go ahead, do it. If you're a Hebrew scholar, I would like to know what you think, because I'm not fluent in Hebrew. I don't teach Hebrew. I've tried to understand this grammar, consulting grammar books and doing a survey of the Old Testament myself, looking at examples. I think that I have got it right, but you might know better than me, so please let me know if you do know better. If you are Tim Mackie or part of BibleProject, thank you so much for the work that you do. I love what you do, and I continue to benefit from it. I'd love to hear what you think. If you would like to offer me correction, I'm willing to receive it. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys. If you don't know Hebrew, you can still help me understand this better, because I've said the Lord is there is an insufficient translation. It's not good enough. And the Lord is over there, or the Lord is that away, like Tim Mackie and Stephen Cook have suggested. I don't think that actually solves the problem. So you might ask me, what would solve the problem? How should we translate this? I'm not sure. It's difficult. How do you capture this in English? That the Lord is there, but also there's motion towards. Could you say the Lord is moving in, maybe? I don't know. The problem with that is that you're using a verb that's not actually there in the Hebrew. You might not know Hebrew, but having listened to this video and heard the grammar and the themes and stuff, maybe you're really good with words. How would you try and capture this in a few words? Leave a comment, and I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again for watching. May God bless you greatly. See ya.